This episode of the All About Pigeons podcast is brought to you by the Champions United One Loft Race. Champions United is a one loft racing event that brings pigeons from multiple breeders together in a single loft, giving every bird a fair chance to compete in a series of exciting races. Birds are trained and released under the same conditions, making it a true test of speed, homing ability, and consistency. Whether you're a seasoned racer or simply love watching pigeons excel, Champions United is a great way to experience competitive racing. Visit championsunitedoneloftrace.com to learn more, follow race updates, and connect with this passionate racing community. Welcome to the All About Pigeons podcast, brought to you by the All About Pigeons nonprofit organization, which is dedicated to promoting education and promotion of the pigeon hobby. Every week, a listener requests to drive our conversations about all things pigeons. Join me, Philip Fry, as we learn and share stories about these incredible birds in this ancient hobby. Today we're going to be talking about hand scanning and one loft races. We have with us Tim Farr, who wrote a really interesting article on this. So, Tim, thanks so much for coming on the podcast and talking with us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Can you tell us a little bit about your own background and then how you got into writing this article about this?
I'm 39 now, so I go back to 12 years old, Southern California kid, just playing with my buddies in the neighborhood, going to my buddy's backyard, and his dad was a cop. He had a bunch of lofts in the yard, and they were racing pigeons. And my buddy pointed to this mountain off in the distance, and it was like 100 miles away. He's like, "Yeah, we let the birds go yesterday, and they came back." And the moment he said that, I was just my mind was blown, and I was hooked from that point on. And I thought about pigeons at at all moments. I checked out every book from the library back when that was a thing, and I was just absolutely obsessed with pigeons from that point on. And for me, a lot of guys are in the sport for the competition. I'm a very competitive person, but for me, it's truly the love and the appreciation of what the bird does and the way they're able to find their way home from unknown places and distances and all that. So I've just been hooked ever since. And I've had them off and on. My career in the military is, I've had to give them up here and there, but I raced when I was a junior member in California, got back into them years later, raced up here in Washington State, left again, still had the birds, moved them cross country a few times back east to North Carolina and then back here. And we've pretty much been here for almost 10 years. And I've been racing pretty much for the last 8 years up here. It's been a good run, but I'm slowing down a little bit right now, but I'm still very much, I've got the birds and still got my eye on competing in a bigger way in the future.
You're club racing in that area right now?
Yeah, yeah. So I'm in the Southwest Washington Racers Club, and actually I'm gonna put a plug in. We have an event this coming Saturday. If anybody's in the Idaho or Washington area, but also Idaho, Oregon, any of the bordering states, and can make the drive up, it's on January 3rd in Rochester, Washington, and they can reach out to me or figure out how to get a hold of me and get details on that. But it's a great event. This is our third year. It's been growing every year since. And our club it's unique. We only fly a old bird season, so we don't fly young birds. We basically our club has kind of decided that just to get more interest and not have the guys that are onesies and twosies in this season and this season, we all focus on one season together and raise babies later, gives the birds a better chance to make it through a body molt naturally. And then we've noticed the returns are just so much greater when old bird season rolls around. Even guys that just don't have the time to train the birds the way they should are clocking birds on some of our longest and hardest races, and it's just giving the birds a chance to succeed versus like your typical young bird season where guys are always, everybody's busy or whatever, and they don't have their system down. It's young birds is very systems driven, and guys just don't get it right, and then they end up sending birds that are in a heavy body mold, losing tons of birds. You got all the environmental factors and all these things that lead to high losses, and then you don't have guys that are able to fly an old bird season, so it just creates this unsustainable program, I guess. And our club's kind of moved away from that, and it's really been working out well, and our club's growing. We're pretty active on social media. We run Craigslist ads. We've actually gained quite a bit of members from the Craigslist ad that I've been running, and then social media. And anyways, yeah. So yeah, I'm definitely a local guy, but one loft racing is in my in my sights. I understand the sport is most likely going that direction, and I've kind of started to dabble in it. I'm not fully focused on it. I definitely want to breed birds that can compete locally and in one loft racing. So I'm mindful of that in the way that I select and I race. But I'm also very, very stringent. I have high expectations of the one loft races that I enter, and that's kind of led me into this whole hand scanning deal. The more I learn, and I honestly I was ignorant to a lot of things in one loft racing, and I think a lot of people out there they just assume if they're a local racing guy, they're sending birds out, and they assume these races are being conducted in the same manner that they're racing at home, which is come to the club, the bird's being handled, the bird is physically being scanned on the scanner and put into the crate. And that's not the case. There's races out there that run the races similarly to a training toss, and they'll just basket load them all up.
They kind of explain how the hand scanning works for like how you guys are doing the race clubs compared to the different various ways of how it could be done at some of these one love races.
Yeah, yeah. Like I said, the races, some out there, and it's really just they don't have. If you look at like some of these international races, they have cheap labor, right? So they've got a lot of people that are able to help them out, and that's why it's and really internationally. So I'm sure there's like it's more stringent for that reason. But you'll see these races, they're always being hand scanned. They're videoing them, they're showing you the bird. They're showing you the band number. Like there's all these verifications that this bird is in fact going to this race, right? Well, here in the United States, for whatever reason, there's guys that maybe aren't full time, that don't have the right loft design to load these birds in a efficient manner without stressing them out and being able to pull them out of the crates individually and then hand scan them the same way. And then obviously it takes time because they have to grab each bird, run it across the scanner, and load it into the trailer. And if they're skipping that, if they are just shoot loading these birds, there's many things that can happen that I detailed in the article. You have chips. Anybody local races knows chips go bad. Any one loft manager that is upfront will tell you every year they are finding birds with chips that fail. So one instance is you think your bird was lost because you entered this race that doesn't hand scan, doesn't have these checks in place, and your bird was there the entire race series. And maybe they just hand scanned on the final, and then they find the bird and they say that the bird showed back up, goes to the final race, maybe wins prize money in the final race or whatever, but you're still out of the average speed for that entire series. And there is money involved. I mean, a lot of these races have lesser prizes on the shorter races, but they also have ace pigeon prizes for the series. So you were not eligible for that, and your bird was there the entire time, and that can go into your selection as well. You're like, people talk about one hit wonders. You're like, oh, this bird only. He was, in your mind, he was lost the entire series. He showed up and did something on the final. Well, he might have been doing awesome the entire series. His chip just went bad, and it wasn't found until the very last race, right? Um, so there's also the humane thing to do is, I expect a lot of my birds, but I'm tough, but I'm fair on them. I don't send injured birds on races. I don't send birds that are not capable of flying the distance on these races. And when you're not putting hands on these birds and not seeing something that happened, it could have, been doing great through the series, and right before the final race, it came in and smacked into something. It's got a swollen wing joint that just isn't visible, but you would notice it the second you grabbed it, or any number of things. And then he gets shoot loaded for that race, and the bird's gone. And in your mind, that bird was inferior, but that's not actually the case. He wasn't capable of making it home, and he could have been a great bird. He just stuff happens, and those are all the things that can be negated by actually putting hands on these birds and running it just like a local race, where you would never in a local race, and no club would show up and just let a guy show up with his own basket list and just everybody assume that those birds are there and just load all their birds into the crates and send them on their way. That's not how races, a legitimate race, is conducted. And I think more people need to be aware of that. And these races are expensive.
Yeah.
You're spending your hard-earned money on these races, and I get it. These guys, like, there's so many one loft races that have popped up, and everybody wants to turn it into a business. You have this dream of having this big race and making a living doing it. And in my opinion, if you see a race that's not hand scanning and is cutting corners in that way, what other ways are they cutting corners? And I'm not trying to accuse anybody of anything malicious or shady or anything, but time is time is money, right? So if it's one guy and he's only got so much time and he's not actually doing this, what else is he skipping? So it's I see the hand scanning now. The more I've really thought about it is like the gold standard. If a race is gonna if they're gonna show you, especially video it, they're gonna hand scan and show you everything, and they're gonna go through that. It's a lot of work. Like it's a lot of work. If they're doing that, they're probably doing everything else right. I can't say that for sure, but that's the way that I feel, and so for me now, it's for me to even enter a race, a one loft race is that's a given. I won't enter a race unless they're hand scanning, period.
All those are super valid points. I mean, it's just another filter for the birds to go through, and the aspect of actually putting hands on a bird. And that's where it's going to start getting difficult. I think you're so on point with this because a lot of these one loft races, because it is kind of a money thing, you got to have a big pot. You get a big pot by having a ton of birds. And if you have a ton of birds, then really running them through that filter of handling each bird, either you're getting more people to help you or it's just not going to get done.
Yeah,
When you see these one lofts advertised, it's all about the different distances, the different pots, activation fees, perch fees. That would be something nice to see, right? Like would be we hand scan each one of our birds.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's a good point to have on there.
Yeah, and you'll see it now. There's certain races, and I think I won't name any races, but on their flyers, they're putting it front and center, hand scan every race, and I think that's awesome. That's something that should be advertised right up front, because to me, that just seeing that shows that race is going to go the extra mile and everything they do. It may not be my type of race because it's a faster type race. I don't like blow home races, things like that. But I
Hmm.
still can respect that they're running the race in a honest and fair manner, and I will endorse that. I'll support that, and I'll recommend those races to people that are into that kind of race. I won't. I will. If anybody, I have people that ask me, especially after I wrote the article, my opinion on certain races. I'm not gonna make it public, but I will absolutely advise people on, because I know how certain races are conducted and all that. Yeah, I think that that's a great thing, and that these one lofts are starting to do is advertising that in particular.
What are some of the one loft races that you do participate in?
Going back to the way we fly here, this last year I didn't enter any. I was gone for work a lot. I didn't end up pairing my birds up till super late. And the only race I had entered the previous year was the High Desert Yearling Classic. I've done really well in that race over the past few years, and I just didn't end up having birds ready in time. But I have entered the High Desert Texas Center Winter Meet 2 years ago. I had a bird on the final drop on that race. 2 years ago, I had the bird that won the race at the High Desert.
Nice.
And then let's see. I mean, I've entered multiple races over the years, but it's really I've whittled down the races that I'm truly interested in. I going back to the type of races, just my thoughts is one loft racing does feel very much like gambling, and I'm not a gambler. I like to compete, but like if it feels like gambling to me, I'm just not interested, and that's everybody's free to do whatever they want with their money, but for me, even locally, I'm not the guy that's like, we'll do like a fun $1 pick bird at the club or whatever. I'll do that, but I'm not the guy that's like pooling birds or anything like that. I just do it because I mean, I'll win prize money for sure, but I'm not trying to bet on birds and things like that. And if the one loft has the conditions and the type of race where it just feels like gambling, it's a lot of like tailwinds, and birds are like, the winning birds are coming from the wrong direction. It's very obvious the whole flock went by, and the first birds that actually won were actually later birds that just turned back sooner, and things like all those things. I'm just not interested in that. So the type of race I like is a race that has a traditionally, is a bit tougher environmentally, more consistent headwinds, where it is going to force the good birds to pull away, They're going to come online. They're not going to, get blown every which way. And a little bit of heat, I think that's also a thing that you don't find in young bird races per se, because it's usually the fall into winter time frame
Right.
that they're run. I like the yearling type races, so I'll send birds, and it matches the time of year that I breed. If I breed starting in, typically I pair up like April or May, and I'll breed all summer long, really. Those late hatch races are really ideal for me in the way, and I don't have to pair birds up early and then figure out where to put them because my race loft is set up just for that old bird season, right? It just fits my system, if you will. So those yearling races tend to be, in the spring into summer time frame. So the temperatures are actually warming versus like your young bird series is starting warm into cold. So it's actually getting cooler temperature wise. So I like the races where it's actually the heat is becoming a bit more of a factor in that those longer races, and actually making it a little bit tougher to really let those great birds shine, right? And I'm not saying they're not great birds that win the young bird races. I'm just saying it's something that I like to see is a bird that really, like, in tough conditions, kind of pulls away or just shows he's consistent in that way.
Yeah.
So that those are the kind of races that I enter, and so I'm really looking for those types of races. I entered the Africa Pro the first year it was going, and I had these dreams of entering the South African $1 million race before that race folded. So that was kind of the type of bird that I'd always envisioned in my head that I wanted, was that tough, like, South African $1 million race bird.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's kind of like that's what I'm selecting for, and that's the kind of race I'm looking for. So nothing against all those other races, but yeah, I'm not in it for the party at the end of the race, or the gambling or anything like that.
In line with individually hand scanning the birds, what else would be some good questions that breeders can ask one loft managers before sending their birds to that one loft race?
Another one that's important, especially for these young bird races, is the molt, right? And I think that, in my opinion, for a young bird race, the ninth and tenth should be pulled no matter what. And unfortunately, some races don't do it because it slows progress down, especially if they get those later birds, right? And they have to pull the 9 and 10, but they already got the main flock going. It's easier to get those birds integrated and rolling so that they can get training sooner. But the problem is, if you send these birds and they do different lines of birds molt at different speeds. So you got some birds that are slow in the wing molt, and they'll probably be fine, especially if you send them late. But you get those birds that are like faster and in the molt, and they get towards the end of the race season and they're on those last final flights. And now that bird is going to the final race missing a ninth or missing a tenth, and he's just at a disadvantage. There's always extremes. There's examples everybody can pull out of a bird that won a final race missing a ninth flight or missing a 10th flight, and the guys that say it doesn't matter, I just don't agree with. I think those are exceptions to the rule. I think the one loft environment needs to be as fair as possible. So that's one way that it keeps things fair for every single person in that loft. And the only other way that these races can control that is keep their intake window very short. But it is a business to some, and I mean, they are doing it to make a profit, so they need as many birds as possible, which means they have to often keep the intake longer, which means they're taking birds much further into the intake, which slows, the progress of getting these birds through the molt, training, and all the above. And then you've got different environments. Like down south, it's really not an issue as far as the molt goes, because they fly so late into the winter. I mean, there's a bunch of races down south that are just doing their final races right now, and their longest races, like they'll do their optional 400s and stuff, and it'll be this month. But when you're talking about your races up north, obviously they gotta beat winter. So those are going to be the races where it's more of an issue, and they got to get them on the road sooner, and they're going to run up against that molt that's possibly causing issues for certain birds. So I would say that's one thing. And then just historically seeing these races, and periodically they'll do hand scan inventories, even prior to the races, right? So it's like, as they're progressing, they're checking the molt, they're checking, make sure your chips are good, things like, it's just the extra step. They're going through and they're treating those birds more like their own team at home, and less like, just, a bunch of chickens that they're just pushing through the crates and here and there and everywhere, and like maybe seeing a bird that's off in the loft and going and grab it or whatever. But there's something to be said for actually putting hands on the bird. And I can't, I mean, there's so many different flavors to one loft race. There's a race out there for just about everybody in the way that they like or what they're interested in. And I can't really advise on, I have my preferences for the type of race, but I truly, the way I've begun to think is if they're doing that, if you see a history of these guys putting hands on birds, they're probably doing everything else right too, because it's just such a big undertaking, in my opinion. Another one, the races that are, I think it's hard going back to, long intake windows, the races that are locking these birds up for months on end, and you'll send them, and instead of actually getting them out in groups, they're just locking them up and just letting them molt and not actually getting them out and flying. I just think that creates a lot of dumb pigeons early on. I think those birds got to get out early. They got to go use their brain. I also train dogs, and you got to train dogs when they're young. They're super motivated. They just have all the energy in the world. They love to learn. They're excited, and they have all this youthful exuberance, and that's the time that you got to capitalize on teaching them. And that's when they should be out exploring, learning their home, imprinting all the things they see out there, versus just sitting in the loft and, going down to the floor, eating food and going back to their perch and sitting and getting fat and not actually using their brain. So I think that's another thing I would look for in a race, is the races that are actually, because that's another one. It's just more work. They got to be out there loft flying these birds in groups, getting birds in, maybe letting the next group out, and just the way they're settling, it just takes a lot of time. And I recognize that it's labor intensive. But that's another thing that I would absolutely look for in a race. I don't like these races that just have the birds sitting for weeks to months, waiting before they start training all of them.
So before you wrote the article, this started as like an online discussion, right?
Yeah, I did. I noticed some races that just were, in my opinion, not doing things correctly, and I decided to, bring awareness to it. I made a post. I think it was like in Pigeon Central or one of the Facebook groups that created a lot of discussion, and that led to me deciding that it was probably a good idea to write an article and get, because there's plenty of guys that get the digest that aren't on social media, don't really have an internet presence. There's still guys, and I hear the stories of these one loft races where they got guys sending birds, sending checks, don't even have access to win companion, which I think is wild. It's like I it's already bad enough. Some of these races, all you're looking at is numbers on the screen. But if you're not even doing that, you're just waiting to hear a word that your bird did something. That's not even fun to me, unless it's about going to the final race party.
All right, yeah.
Nothing against that at all. Like, I don't live near any races that I would, want to go to the final race for, or anything like that. But yeah, if I live down in like Southern California or Florida or Texas, where some of these really cool big races are, and
Mm.
had the ability to go to the final race and it was all about that, then yeah, heck yeah, I'd be all about that. But that's not really the case for me. So, anyways, I just figured the digest was a good way to get the word out, cast a wider net, and bring awareness. And it definitely got attention. I took a picture of the article and I shared that again on social media, and that also, pushed it further. And then truly, I was surprising how many people had no idea how these races are conducted. I had guys contacting me that they just assumed that races were ran, they local race, maybe they got out of it for a while, they just figured that's the only way you can run a race. They didn't realize there's ways to bypass and just take a basketing list from a trainer and make that the race basketing list for the actual race.
Right.
Those are all ways that races are able to get around that. Hopefully I save some people some money, and they don't feel like they're throwing money away on a race that wasn't being ran in a way that they would approve of. Maybe it hopefully got, my hope is also the good guys out there that are doing the right thing, is it helped to push guys their way, because they are doing
Right.
all the right things and setting the standard for others to follow, really. And that's awesome. I think some of those guys don't want to make waves, and they don't want to, I guess, make the other races look bad, but it's a business. Like,
Yeah.
you should be making it known, and those guys either get in line or fall away and don't maintain that standard and don't keep up.
Especially with these one left races, it really is about got to be transparent, fairness, got to check those boxes. And this is a big overlooked thing, So when I read that article, it was just like, oh yeah, like I mean, you had so many valid points in there about all the things that are going to get missed with just this mass operation of just funneling birds through.
Yeah,
What if a person's only sending in a couple of birds and not getting any results, but their birds are doing it?
yeah, for sure.
You also mentioned that your racing pigeon club was doing pretty good by doing different ads on Craigslist and redoing some on Facebook too, or just Craigslist?
Going back, I don't know, I think I made it like 8 years. I made it just an actual Facebook page. I made it as if it's a business, not a group.
Okay.
I kind of got smart on the algorithm and stuff like that. So I started post, just with my iPhone or whatever, made some reels. I started recording my releases. I started posting every week. We'd post the winning bird with the results on the club page, and just doing different things to make content, if you will. And it just started taking off. And I think our page has like 8,000 followers or something like that. And what it does is, again, I've kind of learned a little bit about how Facebook works and how businesses get their word out there. But the more, like, if you make a post and enough people are interested, actually Facebook, without even paying, will actually just push that out to people in your area, wherever. And then truly, we had two members that I can think of off the top of my head. They found us through the Facebook page. It just came up. One guy, his grandfather, was a big time, well known racing pigeon fancier here locally, and he had him when he was a kid, but he never had him again after that. And then it just came up, it just showed it to him, and he messaged us, and that's how. And now he's an active member in the club, and that was how he found us. So I have this like. A lot of guys get discouraged about promotion and they just don't see instant results and they just kind of poo-poo it and they just give up on it. It's like I've been doing it for years, and there's all these other ways that are great. Going to your local farm store, or, just doing releases and public awareness, and all of they're great things. But everybody's on the internet nowadays. Even the older population is getting on there. And Craigslist, we did an ad in the farm and garden section, and guys will just be scrolling. You know how many guys go on Craigslist just to see what's on Craigslist, right? They'd search, or they wouldn't even search pigeons. They'd just be looking at whatever on Facebook or on Craigslist. It would come up. They'd read it. I had this, and anybody that wants to do what we did, they can steal. I encourage stealing. Like I don't care if you give me credit, whatever, as long as you benefit from it. You can go on there. You can search Southwest Washington Racers on Craigslist, or you just contact me and you can literally copy and put your own little personal blurb in there. I wrote some stuff about like don't let your kids get nature deficit disorder, because Jim Jenner talks about that in his
Yeah.
videos and stuff. And I made it like really really like to draw people in, and then there's a bunch of pictures on there, and it just kind of sucks people in, and that's kind of what it takes. It's kind of like me. Like I just happened to walk into my buddy's backyard and saw the pigeons, and he pointed to that mountain and said, "We let our birds go," and they came back, and I was just like, "That's it." That was like the thing that stuck in my mind. So it's just somebody reading it that has never heard of it, and it was like, "What is this? Why haven't I heard about this? I want to figure out more about this." And you find that one person every year or every 2 years or whatever, it's still finding one person. It will keep a club alive.
Right.
If you find one member every 2 or 3 years, your club is still going to survive. And guys don't, they get frustrated with it, and they just don't see the results, and they just get real negative about it. It's like you got to play the long game. Just be consistent with it. Social media, again, I think is great. Make a Facebook page, but make it as a business. Don't make it as a group. Say, whatever your club is in a racing pigeon club, that helps, because other pigeon people will find, and even local guys, you'd be surprised how many guys just have pigeons locally and don't even know there's a pigeon club. I've actually met people that had racing homers at home, didn't even know there was a local pigeon club, and which I thought was wild. But anyways, the more you can bring awareness that you're actually there, and people can just suddenly find you. Also, lost birds. We've had so many birds found because somebody finds one of our club's birds. They don't even I'm talking just going straight to us. They don't even go to because they can call the AU. The AU will get in touch with us. They will just go on Google and type in SWWR, and SWWR Pigeon brings up our club, our Facebook page, and then they message us on our Facebook page, and we've had so many birds recovered that way. Even other clubs, I think more clubs should consider. You got to have a guy that's somewhat technologically capable to do that. But if you have a guy, do it for sure. I totally recommend it. It'll benefit you, no doubt.
All the hard work is already being done. You're creating birds, you're releasing birds. Just we all got smartphones. Just record it and post it.
Exactly.
That's easy, and that does a lot. I mean, that's great to hear that you guys have a growing club. What's the name of your Facebook group so people can find you and copy everything that you're doing over there?
Yeah. If you just search Southwest Washington Racers on Facebook, or search it on Google, it'll come up. You'll find it. I have a Facebook page also, guys. Just look up Farr, Farr, like my last name, and then Racing Pigeons. And I've got a page also, and I've kind of started posting my own stuff too. Not like boring everybody with my own stuff on the club page, but we keep the club more as like general club stuff, and then I've got my own thing going. Anybody reach out to me, they contact me, I'll send them the Craigslist ad, and then just take their own or steal our pictures, whatever. I don't care. Like, stealing is totally fine in this instance if it benefits the sport, and just do what we're doing in their area. And I can't guarantee it, but I strongly believe it will help, with the promotion and growing their club.
Awesome. I hope it all keeps growing for you guys. And, hey, thank you so much. This has been super informative. And I think this episode right here is probably going to take just go back and listen to it again because you dumped a lot of information out there for people to really take some notes on anybody who's going to be sending into one lot races. So thank you so much, Tim. Really appreciate your time.
Yeah, no worries. I'm glad you had me on. Thanks for having me.
This episode of the All About Pigeons podcast is brought to you by the Champions United One Loft Race. Champions United is a one loft racing event that brings pigeons from multiple breeders together in a single loft, giving every bird a fair chance to compete in a series of exciting races. Birds are trained and released under the same conditions, making it a true test of speed, homing ability, and consistency. Whether you're a seasoned racer or simply love watching pigeons excel, Champions United is a great way to experience competitive racing. Visit championsunitedoneloftrace.com to learn more, follow race updates, and connect with this passionate racing community. Thank you for listening to another ad-free, listener-requested episode of the All About Pigeons podcast. If you like the show and want to help it keep it going, as well as supporting your other pigeon promotional work, head to the website PigeonPod, that's pigeonpod.com. You can make a donation there. If you can't make a donation today, support the show by giving us a good 5-star review wherever you're listening to us at right now. That really helps the podcast and helps the algorithm get us out there to other people who might not know about Pigeon Podcast. If you have any episode requests, upcoming pigeon shows, competition results, or you want to be a guest on the show and just talk about some pigeons, or you have a shout out for a friend, shoot us an email at staff@pigeonpod.com. Thanks again for listening. We really appreciate your support. And remember, together the hobby thrives. Support each other and enjoy your pigeons.